No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So data was just released from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that says tracking child abuse deaths in the United States, and the data is actually from 2020 during the height of pandemic, but it found that more white children died, 560, followed by uh,
Black children, right?
black children, which was 504 people, um, 504 children. But it's important to note black people only make up about 13% of the population. So that means there were nearly 6 black children killed out of every 1,000 children, whereas it was nearly 2 white children out of every 1,000. Now, the articles fail to give any conjecture as to why this is the case. So, what are your thoughts as to why abused black children die at such an alarming rate? Again, we're looking at 560 white children, 504 black children in 2022. So, what do you guys think? Let's start with Robbie.
I believe that there are socioeconomic factors that are at play, and this is why we see the disparity. So, like you were saying, 560 versus 504. I would like to see a breakdown of what the financial situation of these families, because poverty typically will breed this kind of atmosphere. And the gaps that were in the system pre-COVID are even bigger. There's less visibility for the kids because they've been doing remote learning, not going out, less reporting. That's it's multifaceted. There's many contributing
Mhm.
factors.
What do you think, Liz?
I think I pretty much believe what was quoted in the article, in which one of the officials said the numbers that we know of are not reflective of the numbers that are experienced or being reported. Again, there are almost 370 million people living in the United States. 12 to 13% of that population are African Americans. I think, like Rob said, a lot of these cases are not being reported. A lot of those children who aren't African American, particularly white children, aren't in the system. And so I think that's why you're seeing, this shift in numbers, if you will. And I'm not saying that, a lot of Black kids have not, suffered during the pandemic, that a lot of Black children haven't died, that their numbers haven't increased. But I don't think when you don't have a fair amount of reporting, I don't think you can really, base this on actual facts of the totality of the situation.
So, you're thinking there's an error here.
I just don't think we have all the data.
Okay.
I don't think we have all the data.
Ellen, your thoughts?
Yeah, kind of like what Rob was saying is that, these kids aren't in school, so teacher people aren't able to spot red flags like they were before, and these disparities are not linear, they're exponential. So if you apply more stress to the situation, such as a pandemic, the disparity is just going to continue to enlarge. So,
Mhm.
these numbers are not surprising because you're just, the pandemic added more fuel to the fire. So it, just
Yeah.
it yeah, it made it worse.
And my quick thoughts. So, I remember as a child getting beat by my aunt with what my cousins called a cat o' nine tails. It's a leather belt
Oh,
that was frayed at the end with 9 little tails. I looked it up and as an adult, and sure enough, it was a tool used by slavers. It was a whip, basically used by
mm,
slavers. So beating and abuse is how parents disciplined, how how especially black parents were taught to discipline. So and then that's how their parents did it. That's how their grandparents disciplined. I mean, it stems directly from slavery, and people forget this. That when the South, that's the way people discipline, and so that's the way black people discipline their children. So it's not surprising that the numbers are higher for to me for black families. People think slavery is not directly affecting us today, but there has to come a point where we break the cycle. Um,
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. But also, let's add to that. There's this myth in the United States that white people don't discipline their children.
Oh
That
no,
white people,
especially Southern parents.
or even up north, like it falls across the board in the United States. And I think sometimes that plays into the PR we see surrounding these numbers.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
would love, it would be great if we can get like an accurate number, because honestly, none of these numbers should be going up.
No.
It's sad if it's
Yeah.
more white children, more black children, or whatever. But there's this idea in this country that only black people or only minorities beat their kids. And let me tell you, that is not true.
Yeah.
That is not
Oh,
true.
it's not true. Not only, but there is a disparity, I think. But
Yeah.
Mike Winter says mental health, poverty, and socioeconomic disparities. Jacqueline Robinson says, I suspect the gaps are definitely attributed to socioeconomic conditions as well as cultural differences. How many of these cases are not reported because of what goes on in our house stays in our house? Quote. Melanie Rochelle James says people need to get over it. It has always happened this way. Victims, Mike Winter says victims of abuse unfortunately tend to abuse. Um, and Melanie Rochelle James continued with, when are we going to break the generational curse? And I agree with that. When are we going to break that? All right. So, are we calling this truth, lies, or shenanigans?
It's a sad, sad truth.
Sad truth.
Call it. I guess we'll call it truth
Yeah.
because
Calling it truth.
kids are dying.
It's sad.
Kids are
Yeah.
dying.
Really sad.
Um,
Yeah.
Yep.
Ellen's got truth as well.
Yep.
All right. All right. So that is our quick fire. And then now, Ellen, you're up next.
Yeah, so this is so much less important than what we just talked about and what we're going to talk about next. So brace yourselves.
All important.
Shocker. A interview between a Reddit moderator and a Fox News anchor went bad. So this Reddit moderator goes on Jesse Waters to discuss r/anti-work, which is a subreddit with 1.6 million people. The actual purpose of the subreddit is to show labor exploitation, toxic work environments, relentless bosses. Many of the posts consist of conversation between abusive managers and discussions of people leaving toxic work environments and finding more fulfilling, less exploitative jobs. So the interview was awful. Jesse Waters used to be he had a man on the street show under Bill O'Reilly where he would find unqualified people to talk about stuff going on in the left to make the left look bad. So he did this here. The Reddit moderator was not eloquent. She made the movement look disorganized and rooted in laziness. Said the workday should be whatever people want. And Waters was eating this up. He laughed out loud when she said that she walks dogs 25 hours a week for work. So the subreddit went private, which doesn't happen. And
It is kind of
totally
funny.
faced. Yeah, it's great. It's ridiculous. Like, I mean, it was a perfect interview. It was just so awful.
For them, yeah. For Fox News, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it went private. People have discounted the movement for being lazy. So my question is, can a few poor representatives destroy a movement, or can it be redeemed if the movement is important enough?
Lizzie?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at Black Lives Matter.
Mm.
Black Lives Matter, I think, is perfect example. It started out as this movement that was not just necessarily towards, all Black people, like Black History Month. It had a specific purpose. And
Yeah.
then it kind of morphed into this nationwide movement that included all other facets of what it means to be a Black person, right? And not have equal
Mhm.
rights in this country. But then it was led by people who had ulterior motives,
Mm-hmm.
who were, using money for their own benefit, who were
Mhm.
doing all of things outside of what the intended purpose was. And now when you hear Black Lives Matter, more often than not, people think it's a joke. Look at Tamir Rice's mom. Tamir Rice was the 12-year-old who was killed for playing in a park. He was playing with what I think was a toy gun that the cops mistook for a regular gun. And so Black Lives Matter used his name in one of their promos a couple of years ago. I think it was last year, if I'm not. And his mom went off
Yeah.
because she said they have no right to use his name for monetary purposes. So I think, yeah, I believe one bad move can
Robbie,
change the entire
real
move.
quick.
Very quick. Can a few poor representatives destroy a movement? Yes. Can a movement be redeemed if it's important enough? Also, yes.
Yeah.
I applied, when I thought about it, I just kind of employed corporate culture mentality to it, because you can clean house, you can rebrand, or you can focus on getting back on brand if you have the correct leadership in place after you've cleaned up.
And I'm just going to agree
Mhm.
with Rob and Liz. But Ellen, did you have any final thoughts?
No, I think both points are true. I think that this person coming on, and especially going on Fox News, with Jesse Waters, I think, it made it look so terrible. Like it was a dog shit interview. If I didn't know anything about what the movement was, then I would think that, yeah, this is a bunch of lazy people. But if you go on the subreddit and see what the top posts are, it's people being, it's like bosses getting on people for not standing up during their shift if they, like have chronic back pain or like broken. I mean, it's just like ridiculous stuff. It's
Yep.
a
Yeah.
valid movement, but yeah, this was this was bad.
Yep. All right.
Oh, Ellen,
So
thank you for speaking to subreddit. I had no idea what a subreddit was
Yes,
until you brought the topic to the table. So thank you.
I think
I'm so glad.
I think a bunch of people online are probably searching up what is this. Jose says, "Dog." It says, "Dog shit interview. Love it." Jacqueline Robinson says, "Unfortunate because BLM and other movements are discredited because of the foolishness of a handful of bad actors." All right, are we calling this truth, lies, or shenanigans?
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans. That
Shenanigans.
was
Indeed.
I watched the interview. It was pretty silly, actually. It was. I
More,
mean, you
more
couldn't
fun
help but to laugh
shenanigans.
at it. I mean, let's be honest. It was.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
was
what
awful.
happens when you have a movement that, is totally started online through social media,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have a leader. It doesn't have, any criteria or any laws or anything that we are goals that this is what we are opposing. This is
Yeah.
our purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.